Constant or even Felix could make it even one day in the shoes of any one of your employees, the dishwasher, the waiter, the line cook?
I would like to see Mr. Constant take orders from customers. I think that would be a good start.
As long as they don't point that.
Because it is a hard job. It's a very hard job, and people do not understand that the respect that is due to the food service workers.
Right.
In all areas
Yes.
from the kitchen. I started out as a busser. I worked in the kitchen. I worked myself all the way up because my dad said, if you're gonna take over this restaurant, you need to be able to do every job in this restaurant. If you can't, you're never gonna make it. So that's why restaurant owners are very passionate. Most of them have made their way up through it. I did want to say a couple other things though, as far as statistics, because I was cut short before. We've had over 2.5 million people walk through the doors.
Wow.
And even though when you're looking at 50 years, we've had over 6 generations of families come into Lamex.
Come through that door.
6 generations. I got an email a few days ago from, it was a Facebook message from a gal in Portland, and she said, I just heard you're closing, and please tell me if that's true, because we will get on a plane tonight and be there tomorrow so we can have our last meal at Lamex.
Gosh.
I'm getting inundated with
those
people.
requests.
I met my husband there. We have 3 kids. We bring them in. Someone posted they were on a blind date and they met. They've been married for 35 years.
Paul is the owner of the Carousel Lounge. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
You know, we opened up 2 years ago. The business has been there since 1967, so it's a staple of Spenard. You know, we brought it back to life. The crew we brought in loves the Carousel Lounge. The customers that come there, that's their bar. And we were doing gangbusters up through March. And when March hit, you know, we realized we had to make some sacrifices. We did what we had to do, and we shut down. We had 16 employees, dropped down to 0, and we did what we had to do. We reopened up, and they let us open up with 5 employees. Through that time, it got harder and harder. We had my manager ended up having a stroke. We had a couple bad situations with suicides, as I mentioned before. We had one marriage fall apart, other relationships fall apart. It's been brutal.
Well, and that's the side of this at the assembly. I mean, they look at, well, it's the sacrifice. It's not, you know, someone made the comment, which I thought was very well stated, that they're not making a sacrifice, they have been a sacrifice.
Yeah. From our leaders, I would have liked to have seen less science and more sacrifice. I would like to have seen, we'll sacrifice our paychecks, take a cut the other way, hit salaries, do something to lead us.
Right.
It is a business, but at the same time, you get to know their lives. And my partner Linda, she's just done a great job bringing the whole crew together. And to see them all scattered, we're down to 5 now. We're going to open hopefully on the 1st with 4 people. And you know, they all have rents, they all have expenses, some have kids. It's just been absolutely brutal on them. I go into apartments every day, and I walk in, and I see a single mom, 3 kids, out of work. The kids are on these laptops. She can't figure out the internet. That's where we're at. That's just one example. I've got about 6 or 7 tenants who are $3,000 to $4,000 behind in rent. To be fair, United Way, Catholic Social Services, Lutheran Services has been helping. I've been working with my tenants to keep them in, but I don't want to lose them. But they're lost. I mean, they just don't know where to go.
There's just nothing, and nothing they can do about it, right?
And to be fair, there's some. It's weird because you've got, you know, some that are suffering so bad, and then some that are nothing. Everything's fine. And you see this dichotomy where how we split up this lockdown, where half the community thinks nothing's going wrong, and half are think it's life's falling apart. So it's not affecting this half over here. They don't see it. And I hope we get that across tonight, how brutal it is.
Probably one of the most memorable of 2020 was all of the hockey kids standing outside, ringing their cowbells. I mean, hockey in this town came under, it's such a huge sport. How many kids, how many adults are participating now out on the ice?
Oh, adults, that's a whole other story, but kids, you're looking over 2,500 just in the municipality.
All right.
When you take the rinks away from them, or you put restrictions on them, because a lot of the kids, they're either not playing for one of 2 reasons. Either A, their parents don't want to comply with the standards and jump through all the hoops to make it work, which sucks. and
The masks, the
The
locker
masks.
room issue, right?
right, and they're being asked like you as a mom with a 4-year-old kid coming into the rink, you're being told you cannot be in the rink while your kid's on the ice with a bunch of strangers.
Yeah, which is just think about that. I mean, when you look at sports in the United States, I know as a figure skating coach, right? We take what's called safe sport, and you're told all the time multiple adults need to be there, right? It's keeping the kids safe. It's all these protocols are set in place, and now you're asking a parent to send their kid, regardless of how young they are, go into the rink by yourself at Ben Boki, where we have a huge homeless problem that's taken over, and now you're going to send that kid in the rink by themselves and hope that the hockey coach that's on the ice can now keep an eye or keep track of all these kids that are out there.
Yep.
And these kids that are already in OCS, who are already in this limbo, right? Trying to find a permanent home, or maybe it is more contact with a parent that is trying to improve their life or whatever it is.
I think what we need to remember is that kids come into custody because they experience trauma. And when they're already experiencing trauma and the impacts, and then you throw them into unpredictable things and exacerbate their mental health, we're not going to get great outcomes. When you take away visits from their birth parents, they can't reunify as quick. When the courts are shut down, we can't hold trials, and we can't get kids to permanency quick. We can't support our workers because our workers are quitting all the time. We can't, Alaska has the highest rate of substance abuse related neglect and domestic violence in the nation.
Right.
And when we have decision makers that are afraid to delve into things to help protect kids because they've lost perspective, it has a huge impact on the very kids that affects. And so it's shocking, it's alarming. You know, I've seen recent news stories about mental health and suicide rates that say that it's not happening at a higher rate. I would challenge people to look into those. I would challenge them. Our mental health hospitals are surging. There's services that are surging. That it's hard to get kids the help they need. It's hard to get the parents the help they need because of the complications. COVID hasn't caused all these complications. It's magnified it. It's magnified it to the point that people are on a tipping. They are tipping over the edge. And my concern is that the decision makers have lost perspective.
My family member was in a Providence Extended Care, and he has been there for 2 years. We knew he was going to stay there.
Right, okay.
But when the whole lockdown happened, they were telling us that we couldn't come visit him. And just like anybody else in these Providence Extended Cares or any kind of nursing home, you can't go visit the people. But the people that work there can go in and out daily.
Right, so, yeah, we talked about that. I mean, the hospital workers are going home,
Mm-hmm.
back home with their family members all the time.
Yep. Yes. And even in this specific housing that he was in, we didn't even really see any kind of outbreak. Every once in a while, maybe there was one case here and there. And so the only options we had were to try to FaceTime with him or call him on the phone, or they bring him up to a window.
So when's the last time your family got to see him in
So
person?
I think
face to face.
So it was my grandpa, so it was my dad's dad, and he got to see him probably 3 months ago through a window.
Wow, through a window.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard from other people that are in the same situation, and their parents are in this Providence, not even Providence, any nursing home, and they have dementia, and so they don't even really understand what's going on. They don't understand why they can't walk through the door and come see them.
Right. So your grandfather, ultimately, I mean, he passed away. Our condolences to your family. But he passed away here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think it was. I'm trying to remember. I think it was the first week of December, the second week of December, somewhere in there. We were told that he stopped eating and drinking, and so we asked, well, can we just at least have his wife come? My grandma, of like 50 years, his wife. Can she just come in? She'll wear whatever you want her to wear.
Right.
Yeah, if she could just hold his hand, and
Yeah, I mean, to go through that, and I mean, you take these family members who've been there, and then for him to just say, well, I'm not going to eat and drink, but it's been, when you go that many months and you can't see your family, or you're looking at them through a glass, we talk about those last moments of someone's life and how important those are for family to be able to have closure, right? Whether that's for them to be able to say, I love you one more time, whether it's an opportunity for a family member to, make amends on something, whatever that is. And the stories that are happening all the time of what your family has just gone through.
Well, this time last year, we were in California. I was able to go see my mom for the first time in about 15 years.
Wow.
And it was an amazing trip. The restaurant let me take off all the holidays, which had never happened before because that's usually against the rules. But we were staffed enough and everyone wanted to make money. And they said, you know what? You've been here almost 11 years. We're going to let you have this vacation. And I was in California for 3 weeks and it was amazing.
So you have the job security, the
all
ability
of
to take
it.
the time off,
Yeah.
right?
Used my credit cards. Shouldn't have done that.
All right. So now, fast forward to now. I mean, you're working at Simon Seaforth. You mentioned you've been there 11 years.
Yep.
Now,
12 February.
12 years in February.
Yep.
Wow, that is phenomenal. When we talk about employees that become like family,
Yeah.
Amber, that is the epitome of it. But talk to me now. I mean, you've completely lost your work,
Yes.
wiped out.
I mean, there's so many layers to all of it. The biggest thing is I've been on unemployment and I've been out of work for 9 months. Luckily, because I've worked full time since I was 15, I was able to get that unemployment. A lot of people in this industry, if they hadn't worked for a long time or whatever their circumstances were, you're not always eligible. Most of us don't
Right.
have that security blanket. So that's why I've been going to the assembly meetings and that's why I've been going to my community council meetings and just fighting and trying to have a voice for all of these industry workers because a lot of them don't know the system. I didn't know the system 9 months ago, but I'm the type of person that I saw what was happening right from the beginning and it was so wrong at the core.
Did you ever even think a year ago that you'd be sitting here today being forced to collect unemployment?
No, and I've worked my whole life to stay and get out of poverty. My family was really poor growing up, and for them to push me back when I've fought so hard to get where I am is really devastating.
Right. Amber, you talk about, you work so hard to come out of the very situation, to come out of poverty, off of unemployment, to the, they've now forced you into the same situation that you busted your butt to get out of.
Since I was 15.
Talk to me about that struggle since you were 15. Walk us through what that looked like for you at 15.
I moved up to Alaska when I was 10. My dad was in the Coast Guard, and so I got separated from him when I was 3. So I was raised in California, and then when my sister passed, she was an infant, I kind of got separated. My family fell apart. My stepdad and mom were drug addicts. So I came up to Alaska, and my dad was kind of my biological dad was on the same path. So I had a hard time living with him because I didn't know him really. And I went to Willow Crest, and my teachers, my counselors, if I hadn't had school, I can't say that I'd be sitting here right now. So I just want to stress how important it is to get our kids back in school because kids like me at that age, I can't imagine them being in a living situation, fresh from another state, living with new parents, and not having school.
Right.
And so
School is what kept you
school's what
grounded
kept me
during those hard
grounded. I
times.
still got in a lot of trouble, but I turned things around at 15 when I started working at Lucky Wishbone.
15 years old.
15,
working
and I had to drop out of West High, and I had to start going to Save because I was so behind on credits. So I made up 4 years of high school in 2 years, graduated with a scholarship.
That is awesome, Amber.
I was getting in a lot of trouble during those years as well, but because I had that job, George and Peg Brown from Lucky Wishbone, he's a veteran, bless his heart, he put a work ethic in me and gave me a second family, and that's what I've been working in restaurants ever since, and I worked at Boys and Girls Club for a little while, but I also waited tables, and restaurants are people. Restaurants are a family for people who don't have a family, and what's happening right now is it's terrible.
You had
People
it all
are
stripped
really
away from you.
yeah. And so I'm fighting to get restaurants back and to help people that are in my situation now that I was in then, hope. They're
Right.
hopeless. There's a lot of really hopeless people out there.
And you know, outside of any check that anyone could write someone, right? I mean, you talk about your struggles and overcoming that to where you became, you know, you overcame poverty, you became independent, you became self-sufficient, and now through no cause of your own, someone literally rips that right out from underneath you and is trying to tell you, this assembly is trying to tell you, well, you should be content. You've got unemployment. We might get you more cares. You should be just fine because you're going to sacrifice on, behalf of all this. They haven't given up any of their paycheck.
No. And they assume that I can just go get another job. Just go get another job. Why can't you get a job? Oh, I don't know, because my kids aren't in school. My husband works during the day full time. Who's gonna homeschool my kids and who's gonna take care of my kids if I have to get a day job? The other crazy thing I want to mention is a lot of the back of the house staff, a lot of them have spouses that work in restaurants too. So now you have an entire household out of income. I mean, it's so common for servers and back of the house to have matches and make families. And now, I can't imagine if both my husband and I were in this industry. So, my heart goes out to so many families. And Simon's, just so everyone knows, might not stay open.
Do you really think that Christopher Constant, Felix Rivera, Forrest Dunbar, Austin Quinn Davidson could even make it even one shift in your shoes?
They probably leave in tears, just from the way that the chefs would say, you ordered that wrong, you can't modify that.
You're not allowed to point at me though.
Yeah,
That's
don't
Christopher Constant's big thing, right? You're not allowed to point at me. Don't say my name. Don't. I could not imagine.
I'd love to see it.
I could not imagine Christopher Constant. I think it would be hilarious. I want to see them have to spend even one day in the shoes of those who they have wiped out of work as they're still collecting their paychecks. So Trina,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you. The other night at the assembly meeting, typically you get 3 minutes to testify at the assembly meeting. The assembly only gave you 2 minutes to testify. I will tell you, I've stood up there obviously myself and testified numerous times. I followed politics for years. And your testimony was by far one of the most compelling I think I've ever seen. Ever. I mean, it was...
The numbers were unbelievable, the amount of money you've pumped into this economy.
Well, I tried to come from a historical point because I was told that the assembly has reached a point where they're not listening anymore. They're hearing the same stories, the same statistics, even if it's the same people telling different stories, they're not paying attention. They're up there on their phones, they're Googling who you are, what you are doing. And so I thought maybe if there was a way that I could come across and give some statistics on not just how many people are affected and have been affected, but then the amount of money that has reached across the world and across through the state and the city of Anchorage. One of my opening statistics was that we've had over $240 million in revenue come through the doors.
$240 million.
And we're a family-owned restaurant. We're not obviously Simon & Seaforth's. We're not a chain restaurant. You've got the franchises, and over a span of 50 years, obviously 3 restaurants. But when you break down that $240 million, the effect of that how many times over that $1 has gone through. Now, mind you, when I held up the first menu that my dad scribbled his signature on, the price of they had 10 items. That was their very first menu when they first opened. And you could get what we charge right now $16 for was $1.45.
Wow.
So exponentially
Right.
over time, $240 million. If you were to probably break that out in today's prices, I don't even know if I have the number for that. Add a few zeros,
Yeah.
35 million, 3 billion, I don't know.
Right.
But it's just the value of that dollar and how it's trickled down to the employees. And how much wages we've paid, how many nonprofits we've donated to. It's well over 1,000. Originally, in my testimony, I said 700, and I went back and I started
So
counting
more than 1,000.
More than 1,000 nonprofits. And I guarantee you that any nonprofit that has been around prior to the year 2000, from anywhere from 1970 to 2005, we've donated to them. I would almost guarantee, because there was a time where we would get hundreds and hundreds of requests for donations, and it would just, we would put them out the door, because we truly believe you give back what you take in.
Right, so $240 million in revenue over the course of those years, donations to more than 1,000 nonprofits.
Before COVID started, I had 35 employees. The hard thing, what's happened over the past 10 months now, is people start getting used to either not working, they start getting used to unemployment, they start getting used to the government giving them money, which is understandable. For some people that are not wanting to work every single day, they find ways to adapt to less money, taking unemployment and not working. So the struggle that we have right now is I have a key group of employees that are still with me that I never put on unemployment from the beginning, and they're still with me. But my 9 oldest employees that have been with Lamex have a total of over 220 years working with Lamex.
Wow.
That's an average of 24 years per employee. I started in the business when I was 8 years old, and I worked on up. And in 1980, a guy, excuse me, a guy by the name of Don started in the kitchen, and he's still with me.
Wow.
And having them not have jobs is the big struggle for me.
Yeah, well,
It's difficult. A lot of families work in restaurants, and mostly the Asian restaurants and the Mexican restaurants. You might have 3 or 4 employees that are all related. And so not only do they work at your restaurant, but they also have second jobs, because they're either trying to provide for their extended family, or they're trying to do what they wanted to do in the first place, which is come to America for the American dream and to be able to work. And so when you have that trickle down effect that goes down through the employees, you know, one thing I want, you mentioned this earlier, I would challenge any assembly member to come to my restaurant and any other restaurant and try to work a shift next to one of our employees and get to know that employee, get to know that person, from the dishwasher to the manager. Their stories are all across the board. They come from all different walks of life, all different families. There's no way that they can sit up there and make rules and laws and mandate that we cannot work and we cannot come to work when they are God to us. It's not right and it's not fair. What they're saying to us is, you are on the bottom, therefore you don't count.
Trina, you had some high-profile people that have been into the restaurant. Share with me, Lamex, because this is history that you don't get back.
Yeah, so I'll start with, if you're over probably 50, you would remember these names. Wolfman Jack, Midnight Special, he came into Lamex. Johnny Cash came into
Good Johnny Cash!
his wife. Kenny Rogers came in. Robert Redford came in.
A lot of
And
women showed up that night, right?
yeah, I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
We did have Ron Reagan Jr. come into
Wow.
Spenard, and his Secret Service came in first and said, we have somebody that would like to dine, but you need to clear your restaurant. And we were like, we're not going to close our restaurant for somebody. Who is it? And then it was like Ron Reagan Jr. We're like, everybody out. Everybody clear the place.
Ron needs to go, right?
Yeah, so his Secret Service came in, and that was exciting. And then Jack Lemmon, who starred with Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
And then most recently, Drew Barrymore came in, and
Just a few years back.
just a few years ago. In fact, if you watch the movie all about whales, you will see the tables, the chairs, the lampshades, and the artwork in their restaurant scene came from the Lamex on Spenard.
Oh wow, I
They
didn't
used
know
all those,
that.
Yeah, they rented plastic tables for us, and we had a sign said, "Pardon our plastic tables, but Drew Barrymore is borrowing them." One more thing, I made a comment to one of the news medias back in May during one of the shutdowns, and it never got played, obviously, but I said, if we end up shutting our doors, it won't be because of COVID, it will be because of this mayor. And
You were right.
that's coming
Spot on.
true. It's the only thing that's changed is we are adding because of the mayor and its assembly.